Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and in today's video we'll be covering some of the more popular classes and specs for PvP in patch 9.1 Season 2. Regularly I get you guys asking me, hey Dal, I want to get an ult up and running, what should I get that's strong right now in arenas? We're only a couple of weeks into Season 2 and I wonder what the patch 9.1 with some of the balance tunings might bring and how it might affect the season. But taking the data for the Season 2 so far, it's interesting to see if the Season 2 is any different than Season 1 and how meta's changed. It's also worth mentioning that not every single spec in the game is going to be mentioned in this video. I'm only going to cover some of the more played ones, some of the more popular ones, primarily for 2v2, 3v3 arenas. It's worth noting that the classes and specs, there's a lot of them out there that actually perform really well and can play at the highest level. They just don't have nearly the same popularity as some of these classes on this list. But there's a reason everybody's playing these classes, and there's a reason they got popular, must because they're pretty damn good in PvP. Starting off, we'll start with the melee. Melee being sometimes one of the easier, sometimes one of the harder positions to play in PvP, and I'd say currently in Shadowlands being melee is pretty nice. Since the armor nerf, melee are able to put up quite a bit of damage going into Season 2, and I think if they continue doing the armor nerfs season by season, it'll allow melee to stay relevant in PvP. Arms Warrior is the first spec on this list. Arms Warriors are monsters right now. The crazy utility they had in Season 1 got pruned slightly, but they retained majority of that utility toolkit. But the damage they bring into Season 2, especially with some of the armor reductions going into Season 2, these guys are probably some of the hardest hitting melee in the game, getting the most amount of damage per global. The opportunity for them to be able to lock you down as Kyrian, just slice right through his vent there, even picking up the banner as a Necrolord and charge right over you. There's a lot of opportunity for warriors, no matter how you choose to play your class, to do amazing within PvP. The next melee on this list is going to be Subtlety and Assassination Rogues. I had to kind of cheat for this list because there's equal amounts of players playing both of these specs. They're both performing really well, Subtlety in particular in a double DPS combination with the massive burst that it provides, but also in 3v3s the opportunity for CC and the chain damage is amazing. Assassination also puts up a lot of pressure. That's what the spec is known for. Between the bleeds, the poisons, and the burst, you are just going to be a headache for the healer, whether it's 2s or 3s. And it seems like rogues are pretty frequently swapping around these specs back and forth, depending on what kind of content they play. So I had to add both of them on this list because rogues in general are doing well, and these two specs are the ones we're seeing a lot of. Some rogues are just bringing Subtlety for 2s, but prefer to play Assassination 3s, and to say that they are one spec or another would be very, very difficult. Another melee on this list is fantastic, and that is Windwalker Monks. They have seen a lot of play. It also doesn't help that Monks have been kind of buggy as of recently, where they're able to one-shot players, but there's a good chance you've seen Monks spinning to win with spinning crane kick, maybe together with either Zoan and Master Weapons from Kyrian, or the Bone Dust Brew Necrolord, and the damage they output is absolutely absurd. Even though Monks got fixed recently, just the amount of pressure and damage and the big AoE component that they bring, I mean, these guys were really just hard-hitting, one of the harder-hitting classes of last season. And again, like Arms Warriors, the armor reduction allows them to maintain such a relevant position, while a little bit squishier than some of the other DPS classes, some of the other melee, since Monks don't have any pure immunities or massive amounts of armor. The damage that they output is still insane, and very much surprises a lot of players and allows them to continue performing extremely well within PvP environment. Feral Druid is another class that's on this list. Ferals have been performing great last season and they continue to do so in this season. Most of them sticking with Necrolord Fae, but there are Ferals branching out towards Kyrian and even some towards the Venthyr Covenants. Ferals gained a pretty massive toolkit in this season. That is the ability to reduce the amount of healing targets have gotten. So a Mortal Strike effect. A lot of other classes have it. Rogues with Wound Poisons, Warriors with Mortal Strike, Monks with Rising Sun Kick, and it seems like just about every single melee that has a lot of flexibility in comps they can run provides some sort of a healing reduction to whatever the target they focus. Feral gaining this, as well as a couple of adjustments, allows them to be very, very competitive, and even more of a reason to play with a Feral for a variety of different ranged when playing in the 3v3 composition. Speaking of range, let's take a look at every ranged DPS class that's performing extremely well in PvP. We first got to talk about Beastmaster Hunters. This is the most popular, most deadly, most vicious DPS when it comes to a 2v2 arena, and it also performs pretty well in 3v3. Recently, Hunters have gotten buffed, where Survival, Beast Mastery, as well as Marksmanship and marksmanship got even more buffs afterwards, have received some significant damage tunings for PvE, and a portion of those damage tunings made it into PvP. Beastmaster Hunters are plaguing 2v2s. It feels like they are everywhere because they are extremely strong, pretty durable, and depending what healer you run with, there's a lot of cross-control CC capability while also being able to dish out unfathomable amount of damage with your pets. The next DPS on this list that's a ranged is Shadow Priest. They're performing pretty well. They are an insanely strong support class that allows them to even have some good off-healing from time to time, if that's the legendary they choose, being able to grip allies out of harm's way or even out of crowd control, being able to mass dispel enemies' beneficial buffs or allies' negative enemy CC. There's a variety of different things that Shadow Priest bring, but also amazing crowd control between stuns, fears, and silence, as well as good damage. They really have the triple threat, triple combo. The only thing they don't have is a lot of survivability, but priests never had good survivability, they were always paper. But if you're fine being a very deadly piece of paper, then priests are in a fantastic place right now. They perform really well in 3v3s and are getting quite a lot of play. Another class on this list that's getting great amount of play as a range is a Fire Mage, particularly Fire. Unlike Rogues, where we had to put Subtlety and Assassination kind of in the same row, there is a lot more Fire Mages than any of the other specs. There are Arcane and there are Frost, but they are simply dwarfed by the sheer amount of Fire Mages that are performing well and are getting a lot more play. Even though Fire Mages took a few nerfs going into patch 9.1, which at first seemed to have affected them from a PvE standpoint, but even that's turning out to be somewhat not true because they are making a comeback slowly but surely as everybody gets better gear. But the combustion damage and the instant burst they provide is still insane. It still surprises a lot of players, and the durability of a Fire Mage between Ice Block and Cauterize, as well as the triple shield barrier legendary, which is still in play. A class that's fairly deadly and fairly durable-ish is pretty good combo, and Fire Mages are continuing to be really strong and dominant within PvP environment. And finally, Elemental Shaman, also fantastic. You've seen a lot of them in duels, but also they perform well in arena. Between Light and Lasso bursts, between getting a setup as a Necrolord with Primordial and a barrage of Lava bursts, or being able to double up on your Lightning Bolts from Stormkeeper, they have really good setups for damage. They don't have the longest cooldowns to wait for. They have a lot of opportunity to just create openings on enemies, and with the decent set of CC that they bring for PvP, they're fantastic. Then we could talk about healers in PvP. In fact, a lot of the healers in the game are very close. You have Restoration Druids that are performing slightly better in 2s, while Holy Paladins are performing slightly better in 3s. But for the most part, all the healers are really extremely close to one another. It's kind of scary. All of these healing specs, but one, are getting a lot of play in arenas, whether it's 2v2s or 3v3s. And it's really difficult to pinpoint which ones stand out more. What was a lot easier to pinpoint when I was making this video and doing my research is just how far behind Mistral monks are compared to some of the other healers. I mean, it's pretty bad. And it's not even without trying, as Blizzard has continued trying to buff up monks and give them new toolkits to play with in PvP. They were one of the first few specs that got any 9.1 PvP adjustments, and all these changes looked really good, really promising, at least at first. There was a lot of hype behind the ability for monks to make a return, but since patch 9.1 launch, it's been crickets. So if you're playing any other healer in PvP, none of them are really bad. All of them are getting a lot of play. Some may be more in 2s and some may be more in 3s, but on average, they are all quite popular, except for monks. So honestly, because they're such an underdog, I would like to highlight monks as one of the least played, least performing healers currently of patch 9.1 PvP. And if you're any other spec of healer, then hopefully you feel happy that at least you're not in their shoes. Really hoping that monks get some kind of an upswing and uptick in the opposite direction instead of getting worse and not improving, but instead going better and better as the season goes on. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I am a huge fan of underdog specs, and which ones do you think that should have been maybe on this list as like an underdog mention? Which specs are a hidden gem, performing amazingly in PvP, but might not have like the most amount of people playing them? I'd like to see some of you guys' opinions. Feel free to hit me up on Discord as well. Links for that always down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe if you want to, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.